You've seen the charming colonial house on Morning Glory Circle 1,000 times, but did you know the iconic facade was built backward? The interior magically transformed rooms into different spaces with fake walls, and a devastating fire forced the cast to flee to Salem? From disappearing pools that drove neighbors crazy to a space-age stove that became a TV legend, the Bewitched Home harbored secrets far more mysterious than Samantha's magic. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about Bewitched Home. Fact 1. The house was built completely backward. If you've ever dreamed of living in the charming colonial house where Samantha and Darren Stevens made their home on Morning Glory Circle, you might want to visit Santa Monica first, because that's where the real inspiration for the iconic Bewitched house still stands today. Located at 267 18th Street in Santa Monica, California, this actual residence served as the blueprint for one of television's most recognizable homes. But there's a twist that makes this story truly peculiar. When the production team at Screen Gems decided to build a replica of this beautiful house on the Warner Brothers Ranch backlot in Burbank, they didn't just copy it, they deliberately flipped the entire design to create a perfect mirror image of the original Santa Monica home. This means that everything you saw on television, from the placement of the garage on the left side to the distinctive roofline and the arrangement of windows and doors, was actually the reverse of how the real house appears in real life. The decision to reverse the design wasn't made carelessly or by accident. It was an intentional choice by the producers when they constructed the facade on Blondie Street at the Studio Ranch. If you were to stand in front of the real Santa Monica house and then look at the television version, you'd notice that the garage would be on the opposite side, the front door would be reversed, and all the architectural details would be flipped, as if you were looking at the house in a mirror. This backward construction created one of television's most beloved homes, even though it was technically built the wrong way around from its real-world inspiration. Fact 2. The exterior opened to absolutely nothing. When Samantha Stevens walked through her front door on Bewitched, viewers at home saw her step into a charming foyer with a staircase and tastefully decorated walls. But the reality behind that famous colonial facade was far less magical than anyone might imagine. The exterior of the Stevens house on the Warner Brothers Ranch backlot was nothing more than a false front. And if you had opened that iconic front door during filming, you would have found yourself staring into a completely unfinished empty space, measuring just 18 feet by 15 feet with absolutely nothing inside. This hollow shell wasn't unique to the Stevens residence either, because the Kravitz house next door suffered from the same architectural emptiness, with its front door also opening into a bare and unfinished void. The reason for this strange setup was purely practical, as all of the interior scenes that took place inside the Stevens home were actually filmed many miles away at the Columbia Sunset Gower Studios in Hollywood, where elaborate and fully furnished sets had been constructed on sound stages. This separation between exterior and interior meant that the production crew could film outdoor scenes at the ranch backlot whenever they needed shots of characters arriving home, working in the yard, or talking to neighbors on the street, while all the indoor magic happened in a completely different location across town. Visitors to the ranch who got close enough to peek behind the facade reportedly found the experience quite eerie, seeing nothing but old boards, construction materials, and empty space where they expected to find the warmly decorated rooms they knew from television. Fact 3. Tabitha's nursery was actually Darren's den. The Bewitched production team pulled off an ingenious bit of television trickery that fooled audiences for years, using the exact same physical space to create two completely different rooms that appeared throughout the series. When viewers watched baby Tabitha sleeping peacefully in her pink nursery, or saw Darren working late at his drafting table in his masculine brown-paneled den, they were actually looking at the same set that had been cleverly transformed through the strategic use of temporary walls and removable paneling. The process worked like this. When the script called for scenes in Tabitha's nursery, the set designers would take down the brown paneling to reveal the pink walls underneath, complete with the nursery window area that gave the room its feminine and child-friendly appearance. And then they would place a mobile temporary wall right outside the door to hide the view into the kitchen and the green-painted hallway beyond. When it was time to film scenes in Darren's den, the crew would put the brown paneling back up over those same pink walls, covering the nursery window area with a plain wall section near the den's fireplace to create the more subdued and professional atmosphere that suited Darren's workspace. This modular approach to set design allowed the production to save both money and valuable soundstage space, since building and maintaining two completely separate rooms would have been far more expensive and complicated. The transformation was so seamless that most viewers never noticed they were watching the same physical location being repurposed, though occasionally sharp-eyed fans caught glimpses of the temporary yellow wall that didn't quite line up properly, revealing bits of the hallway closet door or green wall paint that shouldn't have been visible. Fact 4. The notorious 1970 fire destroyed everything. On a Monday night in August of 1970, disaster struck the Warner Brothers Ranch when a devastating fire broke out around 8:30 in the evening on Blondie Street, the very heart of the studio backlot, where some of television's most beloved homes stood side by side. The blaze spread quickly through the structures, and despite the response of approximately 50 firefighters from both Burbank and Los Angeles, who arrived with 5 pumpers, 2 truck companies, a rescue unit, and even helicopters, the fire consumed an entire acre of the facility before it could be brought under control. When the smoke finally cleared, 4 major facades had been reduced to rubble, including the Bewitched kitchen set, which was virtually destroyed, along with 90% of the corner church and convent set, and the complete destruction of the Partridge family house that stood nearby. The timing of this catastrophe couldn't have been worse, as Bewitched was right in the middle of production for Season 7, along with the Partridge Family and another series called The Young Rebels, all of which had to immediately scramble to adjust their filming schedules. Rather than wait for the sets to be rebuilt and remodeled, the producers of Bewitched made a bold decision to take the entire cast and crew on location to Salem, Massachusetts, the historic home of the infamous Salem witch trials of 1692, where they filmed 8 episodes that became known as the Salem Saga. The mayor of Salem even declared October 8, 1970, as Bewitched Day in honor of the production, and these on-location episodes, shot in Salem and nearby Gloucester, Massachusetts, helped boost the show's sagging ratings, while giving the studio time to completely redesign and rebuild the destroyed sets back in California. Fact 5. The kitchen redesign created infamous stairs to nowhere when the Bewitched cast returned from their Salem filming adventure and the cameras rolled on the newly rebuilt sets. Longtime fans of the show immediately noticed that something looked dramatically different about Samantha's beloved kitchen. The most puzzling addition was a staircase that seemed to appear out of nowhere along one wall, rising up as if it should lead to a second floor or an attic. But instead, it simply ended without going anywhere at all, creating one of the most bizarre architectural features ever seen in a television home. The fire had given the set designers an opportunity to completely reimagine the kitchen, but the results divided fans who had grown attached to the original look because gone was the show's trademark avocado green shaggy carpet that had covered the stairs and living room for years, replaced now with a gaudy beige gold color that felt more in line with the harvest gold and brown tones that were becoming popular in early 70s decor. The kitchen itself received a complete makeover with new wallpaper, a different foyer arrangement, and changes to the hallway between the den and kitchen, along with walls painted in harvest gold, brown, and ease. Baby blue instead of the iconic green that had defined the show's visual style for so long. Even the show's writers seemed to acknowledge how jarring these changes were because they wrote dialogue for Endora where Samantha's mother openly insulted the redecoration, making sarcastic comments about the new look that many viewers probably agreed with at home. The redesign also brought back some elements from the original 1964 kitchen, including the island placement in the middle of the room and the double-wall ovens returning to the sink wall, though the beloved Frigidaire flare stove that Samantha had used for years was notably absent from the new design. Fact 6. The Frigidaire flare stove became more famous than the show. Among all the mid-century modern furnishings and appliances that graced the Stevens household, one piece of kitchen equipment achieved a level of fame that eventually rivaled the show itself, and that was the remarkable Frigidaire Flare electric stove that sat prominently in Samantha's kitchen. This wasn't just any ordinary appliance, because the flare featured a truly innovative design with a pull-out drawer containing 4 electric burners that could slide completely out of sight when not in use, plus 2 side-by-side ovens with stunning glass doors that opened upward instead of outward, gliding up and safely out of the way thanks to special parallelogram hinges and counterbalancing springs. The stove looked more like something from a science fiction movie than a household appliance, with its shiny chrome handles, sleek instrument panels, and space-age aesthetic that perfectly captured the optimism and technological enthusiasm of the 1960s. General Motors, which owned Frigidaire at the time and also sponsored Bewitched, made sure that Samantha's kitchen showcased their latest models, which meant the production actually used 3 different versions of the flare throughout the show's run, starting with the 1964 model in Season 1, upgrading to the 1965 model for the second half of Season 2, and then featuring the 1966 model in yellow from Season 3 through Season 6. Decades after Bewitched went off the air, the Frigidaire flare developed an almost cult-like following among vintage appliance enthusiasts, with a Facebook group called Fans of the Frigidaire Flare growing to include more than 17,000 members who share restoration tips, swap replacement parts, and celebrate their beloved stoves. The appliance has been featured in other period shows like Mad Men and continues to command attention whenever one appears for sale, proving that sometimes a kitchen appliance can become just as iconic as the witch who used it. Fact 7. The swimming pool magically appeared and disappeared. One of the most cleverly executed running gags in Bewitched involved a swimming pool that technically existed in the show's universe but was never actually seen by the television audience, creating a perfect storm of frustration for the nosy neighbor Gladys Kravitz while also saving the production a considerable amount of money. In the first season episode titled "And Something Makes 3, Samantha decided to conjure up a swimming pool in her backyard on a particularly hot summer day, using her magical powers to create the perfect way to cool off without bothering to actually build or install a real pool. The brilliant part of this setup was that the camera never showed the pool itself, instead focusing on Samantha bouncing up and down on what was clearly a diving board, with splashing water sounds added to complete the illusion, while poor Gladys Kravitz watched from her side of the shared fence between their properties. From Gladys's limited vantage point, she could only catch tantalizing glimpses of Samantha appearing to jump on a diving board and hearing the unmistakable sounds of someone swimming and splashing around, which naturally drove her absolutely crazy as she tried desperately to prove to her skeptical husband, Abner, that the Stevens family had somehow installed a swimming pool in their backyard overnight. The genius of this approach meant that the production team never had to actually film any pool scenes or deal with the logistics and expenses of creating a backyard swimming pool set, while still giving viewers and characters alike the complete impression that Samantha was enjoying a refreshing swim. And whenever Gladys would rush over to investigate and demand to see this mysterious pool, Samantha would have already made it vanish with a twitch of her nose. Fact 8. Doors and walls appeared and disappeared without magic. While Samantha Stevens possessed the magical ability to transform her home with a simple twitch of her nose, the Bewitched set designers seemed to have their own supernatural powers that allowed them to make major architectural changes to the house without any explanation whatsoever, and these transformations had nothing to do with witchcraft. Throughout the show's 8-year run, attentive viewers who paid close attention to the layout and details of the Stevens home would have noticed that doors mysteriously appeared in walls where there had never been doors before, then vanished again in later episodes as if they had never existed at all. Walls would shift positions from one season to another, sometimes even from one episode to the next, creating room configurations that would be completely different without any acknowledgement that the house had been renovated or remodeled. The furniture changed with surprising frequency as well, with entire living room sets being swapped out for new pieces, sometimes featuring completely different styles or arrangements that bore little resemblance to what viewers had seen just weeks earlier. Even major structural elements like fireplaces weren't immune to these strange modifications, as the show went through several different fireplace designs over the years, each replacing the previous one without any mention of construction work or home improvement projects. Darren's den experienced particularly dramatic changes, with a bathroom appearing in his office space during some episodes only to transform into a closet in others, and then sometimes becoming an open area with no door at all. These constant unexplained alterations to the set were driven by practical production needs like camera angles, storage requirements, and budget considerations. But they created an unintentional running joke for dedicated fans who realized that the most powerful magic in the Stevens household might have been the set designer's ability to reshape reality itself. Fact 9. Famous masterpieces mysteriously moved around the house. The set decorators for Bewitched made the interesting choice to fill the Stevens home with reproductions of genuine masterpieces by some of history's most celebrated artists, but these valuable-looking artworks seemed to have a magical life of their own as they wandered from room to room throughout the series without anyone ever acknowledging their movements. The most famous piece in the collection was undoubtedly a reproduction of Rembrandt's Girl with a Broom, painted around 1640, which hung prominently in the foyer near the front door for many seasons and became so associated with the show that fans still refer to it as Samantha's entryway painting decades later. This particular artwork was so beloved by viewers that when the house underwent its post-fire redecoration and the painting was removed in favor of a plain mirror, many longtime fans felt a genuine sense of loss at seeing this iconic piece disappear from its familiar spot. The living room featured an impressive collection as well, including a Picasso that the set designers chose to hang horizontally instead of vertically on the brick fireplace wall, creating an unconventional and eye-catching display that added to the home's sophisticated mid-century modern aesthetic. A corner gallery wall showcased even more pieces from the Stevens art collection, demonstrating that Samantha and Darren had cultivated quite refined tastes, despite being an ordinary suburban couple. What made these artworks particularly peculiar was their tendency to appear in one location for several episodes, then vanish completely, only to reappear later in an entirely different room, as if they had simply decided to relocate themselves, leading viewers on what one observer called a merry chase, as they tried to keep track of where each painting would show up next, creating an unintentional game for attentive fans who enjoyed spotting these wandering masterpieces. Fact 10. Tabitha's nursery had impossibly wrong windows. Baby. Tabitha's nursery appeared to be a charming and innocent space filled with toys and colorful decorations, but the room itself was actually an architectural nightmare that defied the basic laws of geometry and spatial logic in ways that would make any real contractor shake their head in disbelief. The walls in Tabitha's room were constructed at such bizarre and awkward angles that there was barely a single 90-degree corner anywhere in the entire space, with walls splitting out at odd diagonal configurations that would never exist in any actual home built by real architects or construction workers. The reason for this strange design had nothing to do with artistic vision or mid-century modern aesthetics, but rather came from the purely practical need to accommodate television cameras and allow the crew enough room to maneuver their equipment while filming scenes with the young actors who played Tabitha. While these unusual angles worked perfectly fine for the production's technical needs, they created a room that on television looked perfectly normal and cozy, but in reality would have been completely impossible to build or inhabit in the real world. The window situation in Tabitha's room presented an even more perplexing problem because depending on which episode viewers were watching, characters could look out through her curtains and see either the backyard or the front yard, even though both views were completely impossible based on where the nursery was supposed to be located within the house's floor plan. In one memorable episode featuring gremlins causing trouble in Tabitha's room, the characters looked out her window and saw the front yard, which made absolutely no sense because that same window would have been pressed right up against the wall of Darren and Samantha's master bedroom, making any view at all physically impossible. Fact 11. The same house appeared in dozens of shows. the charming colonial facade that millions of viewers recognized as the Stevens family home on Morning Glory Circle led a surprisingly busy double life, appearing in dozens of other television shows and movies throughout its decades on the Warner Brothers Ranch backlot, often playing completely different characters' homes in the same time period. Perhaps the most famous of these alternate identities came when the house served as Dr. Bellows' residence on the rival sitcom I Dream of Jeannie, which was produced by the same studio as Bewitched and aired on NBC from 1965 to 1970, creating the amusing situation where the same exterior could be seen on two different networks, playing two different homes for two different families with magical secrets. The house also appeared in episodes of Gidget, where it represented the home of Professor Russell Lawrence and his daughter, as well as in Hazel, the Monkees, and numerous other shows filmed at the ranch during the 1960s and 70s. The interior sets got just as much work as the exterior, with Samantha's carefully decorated living room and other rooms appearing substantially unaltered in the 1969 Jerry Lewis comedy film Hook, Line and Sinker, and the beloved kitchen and Poide. Living room sets were also featured in the 1971 television movie Brian's Song, which reportedly confused at least one young viewer who couldn't understand why the characters from that football drama were living in Darren and Samantha's house. More than 50 years after Bewitched ended, the iconic facade made a comeback in the Marvel Studios limited series WandaVision in 2021, where eagle-eyed fans immediately recognized it as the home of neighbor Agatha Harkness, while the interior sets even made a brief appearance as the ever-evolving home of Wanda and Vision themselves. Fact 12. Tim Allen accidentally blew up the house. The beloved Bewitched house facade survived fires, earthquakes, and decades of California weather, but it nearly met its end in 1995 when Tim Taylor, the accident-prone handyman character played by Tim Allen on the sitcom Home Improvement, managed to accidentally blow it up during filming for an episode titled A House Divided. In the episode's plot, Tim agrees to fix a furnace in the basement of his friend Benny's aunt's house for a segment on his show Tool Time, but disaster strikes when Benny fails to mention that there are actually two gas leaks in the house instead of just one. After Tim and his co-host Al repair what they think is the only leak in the furnace, they remain unaware that gas has been slowly filling the house from a second leak in the kitchen stove, creating an extremely dangerous situation where the slightest spark could cause a massive explosion. The comedic catastrophe occurs when Tim claps his hands twice to turn on a sound-activated lamp, and that simple action provides exactly the spark needed to ignite all the accumulated gas and blow the entire house sky-high in a spectacular explosion. The house used for this destructive scene was, of course, the famous Bewitched facade on the Warner Brothers Ranch. And while the explosion was controlled and planned for the episode, it caused far more damage than anyone had anticipated because the structure was built primarily from fiberglass rather than more durable materials. The explosion sparked a serious debate among studio executives about whether the iconic facade should be demolished entirely or saved and restored, with many people arguing that it should be preserved given its importance to television history and the fact that it was the favorite house of many ranch employees. Fact 13. The house was only 10 feet deep. For most of its existence, spanning nearly 4 decades, the iconic Bewitched house was nothing more than an elaborate illusion, consisting of just a two-sided facade with absolutely nothing behind it except for some supporting framework and whatever construction materials happened to be lying around at the time. Visitors to the Warner Brothers Ranch who managed to peek behind the famous colonial exterior reported finding the experience quite eerie and disorienting, because where they expected to see actual rooms and living spaces, they instead discovered nothing but old boards, scattered junk, and the backs of the painted facade panels that created the charming front view everyone knew from television. This hollow shell worked perfectly fine for filming purposes since cameras only ever needed to capture the exterior. But by 1999, after almost 40 years of exposure to the California elements, including sun, wind, and occasional rain, the structure had deteriorated to the point where studio executives faced a difficult decision about its future. Rather than demolish this piece of television history entirely, the studio made the choice to save it by laying a cement foundation around the backside and actually enclosing what had always been just an open facade, though the resulting structure measured barely 10 feet deep from front to back, making it far too shallow to function as any kind of actual building. This newly enclosed space couldn't serve as a filming location or office, so the studio decided to put it to practical use as a storage facility for maintenance equipment. And the house that once represented the magical home of Samantha and Darren Stevens was transformed into a glorified garden shed where ranch employees kept lawnmowers, service vehicles, and other groundskeeping equipment tucked safely away behind those familiar white columns and colonial blue shutters. Fact 14. Screen Gems had obsessive continuity rules. While many television studios of the 1960s took a fairly casual approach to continuity and often mixed and matched house exteriors with whatever interior sets happened to be available, Screen Gems, the production company behind Bewitched and many other classic sitcoms, maintained an almost obsessive level of attention to detail that would put modern productions to shame. The studio enforced a strict rule that demanded perfect consistency between exteriors and interiors across all of their shows, which meant that if a script called for a character to walk up to the Bewitched house exterior on the ranch backlot and then enter through the front door, the very next scene showing the interior absolutely had to use the specific soundstage set that had been designated as matching that particular exterior, no matter how inconvenient or expensive that requirement might be. This meticulous policy extended far beyond just Bewitched and applied to every show in the Screen Gems catalog, creating a complex system where producers and directors had to keep careful track of which of the many house facades on the backlot corresponded to which of the numerous interior sets located miles away at the Sunset Gower Studios. The dedication to this continuity was so thorough that it persisted even years after individual shows had ended their runs, meaning that if the Bewitched house exterior appeared in a completely different series being filmed a decade later, the production team would still go through the trouble of using the correct matching interior set that had been associated with that facade since the 1960s. This policy required an enormous amount of coordination and record-keeping, but it created a level of visual consistency that helped viewers maintain their suspension of disbelief and allowed these fictional television homes to feel like real places with genuine architectural integrity. Fact 15. The historic ranch was demolished in 2023 after surviving nearly 9 decades of Hollywood history and serving as the backdrop for countless beloved television shows and movies. The Warner Brothers Ranch, formerly known as the Columbia Ranch, met its final end in October of 2023 when the entire backlot was demolished to make way for modern office buildings and 16 new sound stages. The property, which had opened back in the 1930s and sat at 411 North Hollywood Way in Burbank, California, was home to the iconic Bewitched house, along with numerous other famous television facades, including homes from the Partridge Family, I Dream of Jeannie, Father Knows Best, and dozens of other classic shows that had filmed on the tree-lined streets of this time capsule neighborhood. In 2019, Warner Brothers announced they would sell the ranch property to Worth Real Estate Group and Stockbridge Real Estate Fund as part of a $500 million redevelopment project, with plans calling for the complete demolition of all the historic structures to create what developers described as the largest studio development in the country at 926,000 square feet. Despite passionate pleas from fans and television historians who argued that these facades represented an irreplaceable piece of American cultural heritage, the demolition proceeded as scheduled, with the Bewitched house and its neighbors on Blondie Street being razed along with the park, swimming pool, and brownstone facades that had appeared in productions ranging from American Beauty and National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation to more recent shows like The Middle, Young Sheldon, and Marvel's WandaVision. A few items were saved before the demolition, including the famous Friends Fountain, which was moved to the main Warner Brothers lot and incorporated into the studio tour, but the houses themselves were reduced to rubble, ending an era of television history that had spanned nearly a century.